A report of the SACC Unburdening panel in Soweto at the moment. The document aims to report back on the panel's work in offering individuals and groups a platform to air their experiences of inappropriate or corrupt offers. It's been operating since April last year. Let's take you live to the Regina Mundi Catholic Church for more on that.
For an attractive position or money or shares in a company or any other favor or incentive, whatever it is that they have against you. This was really essentially a pastoral process for the people. It was not an investigation. It was a pastoral process. As the word says, it is a provision for people to unburden, to offload themselves and tell what they wish to tell freely. The unburdening notion is based on the Bible text that says in Galatians, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. The panel is chaired, as the senior vice president is already introduced, by the president of the SACC. Now, the panel was intended to work in the following manner. People would indicate through the office of the General Secretary their desire to tell their stories. And they would refer to the lawyers. We have a panel of lawyers, advocates as well as attorneys who come together from different locations, and that three of them would depose a person at the same time so that they can compare notes as they work with the person, so that all the reports are gathered very professionally, legally professionally. And then the General Secretary, because of his role as the spokesperson of the SACC, that is myself, would not be involved in any listening whatsoever, so that I don't get to a situation where the journalist asks me a question I would want to refuse to answer, because I'm not supposed to tell what I've heard. So that was the plan. So I would not participate. I would simply refer them to the lawyers. And then the lawyers would group the cases into categories and present them for oral discussion with the panel. Now, depending on the wishes of the person concerned, the information would be used in the following ways. Be utilized by the churches for advocacy in the anchoring of democracy in the South Africa we pray for. We have the privilege to do that. Be made public for South Africans to know what is going on. And thirdly, as is appropriate, be given to a constitutional body like the Human Rights Commission, the Public Protector, or any organization identified by the person concerned. In fact, we approached the African National Congress and advised them that we were going to do this, and that if there were people who wanted to use this channel to report to the ANC, we would bring that, and the Secretary General said they would be happy to receive the information. Now, the unburdening panel process was indeed triggered by the Jonas Mentor revelations of 2016. When the governing party, we don't want to use the language of the ruling party because our constitution does not have a ruler, it has a governor, a government. When the governing party proved unable to deal meaningfully with these revelations and instead seemed to live with the view that there would be no room for following up on these, as I quote, all hell will break loose because the leadership of all had their own Smolanyana skeletons. The SACC opted to create this listening facility. It was to hear from people who had either been pressured to participate in corrupt wrongdoing or had witnessed such. Some came forward only to share their experiences with no desire to be publicly revealed, but to clear their chests only. Others were ready to go public, and these were encouraged to go to the Public Protector, and they did. Their stories are now before the nation in the State of Capture report that is yet to be acted upon by the government. Although the Jonas Mentor Gupta revelations and the ANC non-response triggered the creation of this process, we declared at that time, and this must be made very clear, the unburdening panel will receive information of any corruption experiences that only cover the period of the democratic era. It is understood that there are many cases of corrupt practices that impact on people that are a rollover from improper opportunities of apartheid days, as these impact in the democratic period, they will be entertained by the unburdening panel. We have yet to receive any person who has information of the pre-1994 era. We know properties were stolen. We want that information. Or even the shenanigans on the transition period, the thrashing of papers and reports. We have been intrigued by the recently published book, Apartheid, Guns and Money, by Henny van Vuren. That makes very interesting reading. It's hard to put it down. The workings of the panel process changed, though. They changed in two unexpected respects. Firstly, most people came to us were broken people who just wanted to unburden, as they would say, so that I can sleep. They insisted on talking only to the General Secretary as a priest. The thought of going to the lawyers frightened them. We never thought about this, that people might be uncomfortable going to the lawyers. They just said, I am Fundis. I just want to talk to you. I am not supposed to listen. No, but I get. If they're not going to talk to me, then they're not going to the lawyers. This is something that we had not anticipated, and it happened. And I think, and I take this back to the days when we were ministering to families of people who had been killed by the necklace, or people that had participated in the stoning of others or necklacing others. There are people in the room who might be familiar with those days, and some of them who participated together in trying to heal the processes. But at night, somebody would knock at the door. Fundis, I can't sleep. Because of what I did. I just see your face each time I try to sleep. Please help me. So we would then have to deal with unburdening these people, help them to see the sinfulness of their actions and what remedies are appropriate in this environment. And so this is what we had to do. We had to go back to those experiences in order to deal with the current. But what frightened me actually is that these people were terrified. They had genuine fears that they terrified anybody might find out that they had talked to us. They said, if my story is told, they would say they will know that it came from me. And my life and that of my family will be in danger. And I say, if in the age of constitutional democracy, we have citizens who are so terrified of their own government and its agents and operatives, so as to fear for their lives, then we have a serious problem. Indeed, we have a serious problem. When we have people dying in the dozens just ahead of an election because they made themselves available to serve, we do have a problem. There were cases of people at municipal and provincial level who were pressured to divert funds inappropriately to certain activities that had nothing to do with the work and purpose of the budget. There were people who were prevailed upon to rig tender processes in favor of certain companies and individuals, or bend and tailor regulations for a specific desired outcome. This is sometimes referred to as shaking down the people, accessing money and opportunities through deceitful and illegal ways of pressuring vulnerable people or companies. While most of the people opted for the security of what we called the anonymity option. You know, we added that anonymity option as a kind of like an afterthought. It's actually at the bottom end of that concept paper. It was an afterthought. It turned out to be the most popular thing to do. They wanted the anonymity option. Where the deponents are not divulged, some of the people chose to go public with the information they were giving to the SACC unburdening process. Now, because the people went to the public protector and they obviously revealed to the public protector that they had also been talking to us, we got summoned by the public protector, and I said, oh my goodness, what am I being summoned for? We received a letter of summons. We understand you are gathering information. Do you have anything that we should know? I said, Madam, everything that is worth for you to know by anybody has been given to you by those who have it. Everything that has come to me that has not come to you because people want anonymity stays in my chest. I'm a priest, you can't have it. The second and most radical change in the process, it began mainly as a receptacle of stories being shared in Unburdening, but soon it became apparent that there were discernible patterns of systemic undermining of governance that go beyond petty corruption. This is a throwback to petty apartheid, this is petty corruption, so as to seriously threaten constitutional democracy. Therefore, while corruption, which is part of the brief of anchoring democracy in the SACC processes on democracy, were concerned with the broader issues of South Africa's constitutional democracy. When it became clear, therefore, that the trouble was beyond petty corruption, we shifted from listening to the mode of what we call in our SACC approach, See, Judge, Act. The C is rigorous research to understand as fully as possible the state of the question on the matter at hand. The judge is applying the lenses of the gospel to say, what is the value judgment? What is the value judgment call on this matter now that we know what we know? And the act is when a resolution is taken to act as informed by the application of the gospel values. That's our See, Judge, Act. Now, churches are notorious for making statements on things they know very little about. We try not to be this. In the C part, we have previously worked with research entities like the Human Sciences Research Council, the Institute for Justice and Reconciliation, Nelson Mandela Foundation. This time we linked up with a diverse research volunteers that work from different locations and coordinate their work and findings. This, together with what we already know from our initial unburdening process, becomes the C part of our work, which must be followed by a theological judge process leading to conference where the act will be resolved. Now, what has emerged in the C process, I'm telling you, is disconcerting. It now seems that the problem is far greater than corruption, but organized chaos. We have now come to learn that what appears to be chaos and instability in government may well be a systemic design of the madness that ills our governmental environment, a chaotic design. You know, when you throw chaos and people wonder about the chaos, you're doing something else. A careful analysis makes the case for the following observable trends of inappropriate control of state systems through a power elite that is pivoted around the President of the Republic, that is systemically siphoning the assets of the state. To do this, we chose only 7, because 7 is a good number in our culture of the Bible. There are many more things, but I'm going to give you 7. Securing control over the state wealth through the capture of state-owned companies by chronically weakening their governance and operational structures. 2, securing control over the public service by weeding out skilled professionals. 3, securing access to rent-seeking opportunities by shaking down regulations to their advantage and to the disadvantage of South Africans. 4, securing control over the country's fiscal sovereignty. You might understand, therefore, why there is issues with the Treasury. 5, securing control over the strategic procurement opportunities by intentionally weakening key technical institutions and formal executive processes. 6, securing a loyal intelligence and security apparatus. Lastly, 7, securing parallel governance and decision-making structures that undermine the executive. I thought I would pause at this point and actually do illustrations of these 7 points which will go on the screen, and I'll come back to conclude with the last paragraph of my statement. Unfortunately, I have no direct control of what I'm doing. I'll have to say, next. We have titled this State of Capture. In other words, it is the state of the capturing environment. Remember that I said we research to understand the state of the question. So in this case, it is the state of the capture. It is much more than corruption. We've opened again with Mandela's statement, but focusing on the first part, transparent and accountable, government not to be part of the problem. The next slide, the power elite anchored at the top. You can't get better than that because you've got a total vantage position. And the president says last year, July, if it were up to me and I made the rules, I would ask for just 6 months as dictator. You would see wonders. South Africa would be straight. That's why if you give me 6 months and allow Zuma to be a dictator, you would be amazed. Absolutely. Everything would be straight. Right now, to make a decision, you need to consult, you need a resolution, you need decision, collective, it's a lot of work. And so, with that in the backdrop, you look at the 7 ways in which this power elite that is anchored around the president undermines the state. These are the same things I've already read to you. So I'm going to go on to the next slide that talks about, it deals with the first 2 of those 7, the first 2, capturing the state-owned companies and weeding out skilled professionals. President Zuma comes to office in April, actually May, whatever that month was, in 2009. I've been corrected, it should not be state president. I still have this, I must remove it. Because we no longer have a state president in the Republic in terms of our constitution. Apology. Then you see what happens. Within a year, in October 2010, Barbara Hogan is shuffled out. In those days, there used to be almost a reshuffle almost every year. Shuffled out of office, apparently for refusing a presidential interference in a state-owned company, board appointments. Feki Mentor the same year is called, so she says, to a meeting at the Gupta Saxon World residence, and she doesn't get lost and is offered a position, public enterprise ministry, that provided she drops the SAA flight route to Mumbai, and she refuses. Same year, Minister Kugaba is appointed Public Enterprises Minister, and he makes a number of changes on the board. At ESCOM, huge changes at ESCOM. Nazia Karim, wife of Muhammad Hussein, family member of the Gupta Business Associate Salim Essa. Romeo Kumalo, co-director with Essa in a company. Mark Pamensky, former director in Gupta company, Oak Bay. Mariam Kasim previously worked for Gupta company, Sahara. Ben Gubane was in business with Essa. Kuben Mudli in business with Pamensky and advises Gupta aligned minister, so we know, Musebenzi Zwane. And so on it goes. These are the changes that are made in 2010. Then, of course, Transnet, same thing is happening. Iqbal Sharma becomes a member of the board. And I won't go into all those because they're just detail of just to illustrate. This is how the capturing actually happens. That a minister comes in, changes happen, then you get a big proposal of a major deal and then it is managed in an opaque manner. That's really the kind of modus operandi. 2011, Minister Gigaba appoints Brian Molefe, CEO of Transnet. There is a report that this was predicted by a knowledgeable source 3 months before it happened, and it was published as such. And of course, the CFO is also appointed, Anoj Singh, and they proceed to sign off huge deals. In the next slide, you will see these. President Zuma then appoints Minister Lynn Brown, Public Enterprises, and she brings changes to Danel, the Danel board, including Mr. Mutseki, who owns a stake in the Gupta uranium mine Shiva, and Dan Mancha, who is advisor to Mr. Zuma and to Ms. Minister Mutambi. 2015, President Zuma appoints Mr. Mzwane into the position of Mines Minister. And it is reported that at the same time, Minister Brown appoints Brian Molefe as ESCOM CEO. And again, he comes along with Anoj Singh to be CFO in this environment as well. SABC Jonas in October, the very next month, as part of the scheme, is offered this huge opportunity. Hey, SABC, Imalengaga. What? You December, the same year, this is a very busy year, 2015. The President fires Finance Minister Nhlanhla Nene reportedly hours after he presented to Cabinet on the unaffordability of the nuclear power and replaces him with Minister Van Rooyen, who arrives flanked by two advisors, Ian Whately, Ms. Jessie Duart's son-in-law, and Mohamed Bobat, former Gupta employee, but he is forced to reverse the decision. Okay. I'm being educated. Thank you. I'll try. Now, of course, enter Pravin Gordhan. I should say that the Council of Churches approached the President at the time when Mr. Nene was removed. We wrote, especially in terms of our South Africa We Pray For, focusing on the poverty and inequality aspect, because we recognized the huge impact that this would have even on the pension funds that elderly people are now relying on. And so these were issues that were raised, and the President agreed with us that these are matters of concern. But then in 2017, the President had another wholesale cabinet reshuffle, which we all know about. And I don't want to spend too much time on this. It is just to illustrate the issues. But then the effect is that every time these changes happen, a lot of institutional memory is lost with the people that depart as a result of the uncomfortable manner in which the changes have been done. I can say that the only time we ever had a very good transition was from the Nationalist Party to the African National Congress. It was the best transition. Because the intention was to keep as much of the knowledge and information we believed we didn't know enough, so please don't go too fast. Let's collect what we can. But since then, everything that we gathered then, we throw away. Now, between 2012 and 2019, Transnet announced that it would spend 300 billion rand improving its aging rail network. That's a huge pot. Now, Minister Gigaba moves Iqbal Sharma, who is a business associate of the Guptas, to the Transnet board. Same year, December, this is when the report was made about Brian Molefe is about to move. And he did go. Then Minister Gigaba appoints Mr. Sharma in the Special Board Tender Committee. and makes him chair of this, which has got something like minimum of 2.5 billion and above to spend. In 2013, Transnet announces 50 billion rand locomotive tender. They appoint McKinsey to advise on deal structure. And funding. McKinsey agrees to subcontract part of the work to regiments, after which the original fixed contract balloons from 35 to 100 million, signed off by Mr. Mulefe and Mr. Singh. 2014, 1 month before the tender is awarded to 4 train builders, Mr. Sharma, who had adjudicated the process, together with Mr. Gupta and Mr. Zuma, acquire a stake in VR Laser Services via VR Laser Property, an engineering firm that is positioned to benefit from the Transnet local tender through the supply chain process. March 2014, Transnet awards that 50 billion tender, seemingly in a bid to gain access to the lucrative regiments. Regiments had given a proper contract, but somebody wanted that contract, and so they tried to buy regiments. And when that didn't work, they buy Trillian, and then try to get that business away from the company that already had it into this other one, with the help of someone who was at regiments by the name of Eric Wood. And the troubles move and get established at Trillian. And ultimately, Trillian gets comfortable with an amount of money for work that really had not been done, apparently, because the work belonged to another company. Now, we learn that Regiments is not a Gupta company, not a Gupta-linked company, but that Trillian is a Gupta-linked company. That's what we have learned. As a result of this, there is litigation where the Regiments is litigating against Trillian and Mr. Wood on this matter. Now, evidence has also emerged of how these proceeds of these contracts have been spirited out of the country through various Gupta-linked shell companies. And the chairman of Trillian, Mr. Tokyo Sokhwale, launched an investigation, or say we tried to do that, but it didn't seem to work. There is an untold story of the amount of money that actually leaves our shores in these processes through foreign-based shell companies, Hong Kong, Dubai, all over the place. And we do not even know the impact of this on the fiscus in terms of losses of tax revenues. In 2015, Public Enterprises Minister Lynn Bang overhauls the Denel board. We've already dealt with that. But what's interesting here is that the Minister of Finance at the time decided to put a halt, brakes into this because it did not meet with the PFMA. It seems that the purpose of the Denel deal was to her to give these nexus of companies access to intellectual property of this really belongs to the state. I mean, if Denel is South Africa's anchor of military information and all the technology that is developed. So if you actually spirit that out to a Hong Kong company, then we have a problem. I won't go to the reshuffle. We recognize that there's a serious shakedown process where some government ministers, act in concert with private interests and use regulatory instruments or policy decisions in an arbitrary manner to shake down incumbent businesses, including black businesses, indeed, and favor particular interests. And instead of prioritizing job creation and economic growth, decisions are taken for the benefit of a particular company or group. The case that's been covered in the public prosecutor's report of Minister Zwane is of interest. And he made the statement, we are clear that if companies cannot mine safely, they should not be mining at all and should allow other potential holders who respect the laws of the country to continue mining. Now, therefore, they use health and safety law, for example, as well as other mechanisms, which they do not apply equally to everyone. The case of the coal mining of Idwala mining in Mpumalanga, where we can go on and on about this. It's really just to illustrate. There are a number of them. I don't think I want to go into everything that is here. But I would like to go quickly to the Tegeta Optimum case, which is a fascinating case. 2013, Glencore, which owns Optimum Holdings, writes to Eskom because they are losing nearly 1 billion rand per year based on their 1993 coal supply contract of 150 rand per ton. They invoke the hardship clause. Business people understand this. I'm only just learning about it. That's the business is about hardship clauses. I wish I had one of those for my household. Which means that Optimum and Eskom could enter into negotiations if either party felt that the coal supply contract was no longer in their best interest. 2014, this started in 2013. In 2014, they signed a cooperation agreement which paves the way for a new coal supply contract to stop those losses. You know, we're working with each other, you're getting somewhere. 2015, Mr. Molefe becomes the acting CEO in April. First thing he does in May is to meet with Optimum and say, no more negotiations. You're not going to get away with it. You will pay, you will stay with the 1993 contract, which then of course means that they can't cope, because that's why they started the conversation. And therefore, jobs get lost. 2015, the same year, 4 important things happened. The first one is that Glencore negotiates, please, can we pay 300 rand then, just double what we were paying until 2018, and then from then on we pay 570. Instead of considering this request, Eskom imposes a fine of 2.1 billion on Glencore for supplying poor quality coal. Oh, this coal was poor quality all along, we didn't realize it. But the same coal, the same month, that very same month, another mine that was producing worse coal, their suspension was lifted. That was the Brakfontein mine that I didn't go to. KPMG approaches Glencore with an offer from an anonymous client, which turns out to be the Gupta companies, to buy the same